We're gonna go into the benefits of shooting a tethered workflow and how I use it in my everyday shooting out there. So this is sponsored by Panasonic. So we want a big thank you for Panasonic and Lumix, which is the brand that I shoot. I've shot many different cameras, so a lot of this will apply to any camera that you're using today, but we do want to thank them for flying me in here to speak about this. So a couple of things, just a recap before we even start. So I guess it's not a recap. We're going to talk about what we're discussing today, and then we're going to get into each one of these different topics, expand them, and talk a little bit more about each one. So what is tethering? We're going to speak about that. Why we're going to tether. Why would you tether? Why do you need to tether? When not to tether, possibly. When to tether, and getting started out there. How you get started, how you actually go through all the dialog boxes, all the different buttons, where to go if you're Canon, Nikon, where to go if you're Fuji or Lumix, stuff like that. And how the tethering actually has helped me become a better photographer. So I do a lot of studio photography work. So I use it quite a bit in the studio, but that doesn't mean you're limited to just the studio work. You can actually go and bring this on location. We'll show you some examples of ways to tether and why I would tether outside of the studio. So everyone thinks tethering and you have all this gear and it's only the studio, and that's not necessarily the case. So I'm going to show you that. So what is tethering? So for anyone out there that doesn't know what tethering is simply the process of how I get my images from the camera to my laptop without taking the card out. So different wires, your camera all comes with a wire. So it comes with a wire, but it's only about this long. And it doesn't, you'd be shooting very close to your laptop. So we're gonna actually take, instead of taking that card out, popping the card into a card reader and downloading everything, which is time consuming and you have to stop shooting, I'm actually able to plug in my camera. So I have a GH5 that gets plugged into here, into my USB port, and I'm able to start shooting right away. So if you look at the image I have up there now, that's in my studio in Phoenix. We have a camera, I have a pocket wizard there, it goes out to a tether cord, and the image gets transferred in about 2 to 4 seconds to the laptop. And now it populates right in Lightroom. So I can even edit it and show people what it looks like edited. And then I also added another element. If you see, there's a plasma screen. So if I have an art director, a client, someone else like that, it populates up on the plasma screen. They can see it as well behind me. Sometimes I turn that around and I show the model that or the client that, so they know what I'm talking about when I tell them to pose differently. So we're going to break that all down and show you examples of a lot of that. So you have connection options. So we just spoke about a few of them. You have an HDMI connection that most laptops will have, and your camera will have. So your HDMI connection will send HDMI out to a TV. You have a USB connection, which we just talked about. So this is a USB-C wire by Tether Tools, and the one that came with your camera is going to be different depending on your port. And you have the old way, taking your memory card out, popping it in here, waiting for Windows or your Mac to populate that, and then dragging and dropping them or importing them, which we all know importing with Lightroom or other programs takes a while. So now you have to shoot a lot of pictures, a lot of frames, and then pop it in. You're not going to take it out every time for every picture. So what this lets me do with the first option, the HDMI, is I can shoot live shooting. So if I was teaching, I would want to use that. So what I see on the back of my screen with the HDMI is what you see. So if I'm moving like this, you see it's very dizzying, very distracting. With the USB connection, it actually pulls the images off as I'm shooting the images. So I'm shooting away and they're populating the actual images. It's picking it up, it's copying it, and it's moving it. So why to tether now? So the reasons that I tether are better portraits. So when I'm shooting a big group shot, we shot a group of 110 people out in Phoenix on the Biltmore lawn, and we didn't have the pleasure of tethering because it was outdoors. We had 15 minutes, and they were like, you have to do it at 15 minutes at high noon with the worst light possible and the light behind you, and you can bring 2 lights, and it's windy, and have fun. And we have to go to lunch right after this. So I had to get 100 people to try to keep their eyes open and pay attention to me from way back across the lawn and standing on top of something to get them in there because I wanted it from a higher angle. So I had like 2 people. I had to yell to the one person and then yell to the next person and then yell to them and then backwards, and then they still all didn't look. But if we had it tethered, if we had it say in the studio or tethered or even brought the laptop there, we'd be able to see, okay, the third person on the left keeps talking, tell them to be quiet because I could see the image. On this little tiny screen, I can't see the image. It's this big. It looked great. I got home and we had to take about, how many images did we take? 5, 10?
Yeah, at least.
At least probably about 8 pictures and put them together to switch people's heads out. Because this one's talking, someone else, the CEO, sitting there with his hands in his pockets, and they didn't like some of those things. We didn't like that about the image. So there was a lot of extra work where if we had it set up ahead of time on site, we could have shot that. Kids photos. If anyone shoots kids, they're running around. I was with my 2 nephews yesterday, and it's like smile, and they smile for like a split second, and then they move. So I have lots of blurry pictures with my cell phone. But if you have them in the studio, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to be running around. They're going to be very active. And this way you can see if you got the shot or if you missed it or if they were moving. Family shots, same things, lots of posing, making sure making your triangles, making your poses look good, bringing everyone close together in your poses. A big reason that I tether in the studio is fixing the small details. So reflections, you saw the picture before. So like the glasses, they're tilted down on this picture on purpose because there's a reflection of the softboxes in there or the sun or whatever you're shooting. So reflections where you don't want them. Reflections usually pop up usually when you don't want them. When you need them, they're never there. You're trying to get a beautiful reflection. You're laying on the ground in a puddle, trying to get the building in there. It's never in the right spot. So here we're trying to eliminate reflections. Shadows, hats are the worst. I shoot lots of cowboys out by me, but just a little tip, this looked great in the back of the camera, and then I had her tilt her head up a little bit so I can get the light into her eyes. If not, it was very shaded, you can't see her eyes. So little tiny adjustments that, again, I shoot here, it looks great. At 3 inches, like, oh, that's perfect. But then you get it on a bigger screen and you missed that you had no light in the subject's eyes. Critical focus. Super important to make sure that you're getting their eyes in focus and having everything that you want in focus, that it didn't suddenly you missed your focus point and their ears in focus, or product photography we'll talk about as well with the critical focus. And eliminating distracting elements. What I mean by that is stuff that's behind them, stuff that's in front of them, their clothes that maybe are a little bit wrinkled or something, an earring that's twisted. There's a great picture someone printed for our wall in the studio, and like the earring is like flipped sideways and it bugs all of us. It's a beautiful picture, and it's just this one little thing that the earring just fell the wrong way, and it kind of takes away from it because everyone sees it like, oh, I wish the earring was straight. But the picture's gorgeous besides that, and that's a quick, easy fix that comes up on a 50-inch or a 60-inch TV, and you go, oh, let me fix your earring. You fix it, and then you move on. And I call it like pre-photoshopping. I'm pre-photoshopping my images as I'm shooting them instead of fixing it later. I hate to fix it later. So my biggest soapbox in photography and as I teach is consistency. Getting consistent images throughout the whole shoot, throughout your career, everything. You want to have pictures that are going to reflect similar, especially within a shoot if you're going to use something in an ad campaign that they all look the same. So I collaborate with a lot of art directors and other people that are on the team, and that helps us all be on the same page because they have a vision and I have a vision. And usually those visions are 2 separate things. They're not usually the same vision that we really are. I see you laughing back there. They don't really have the same vision as you do. And a lot of times they're kind of directing you one way. And I've worked with a friend of mine at the next studio over, and I love the way he handles it. He lets them do their thing, and he'll shoot it. And then they'll be like, oh, it's okay. He's like, do you mind if I change one thing? And he'll like move a light a little bit and take it. And they're like, we like that a lot better. It's like, okay. It's like, let us do our job, you do your job. But you have to show them. And if you can't show them on a big screen like this, they don't understand why that little adjustment as a person that knows light and photography can help them get their vision quicker. Makeup. So makeup is a big problem sometimes if it's done poorly. So your makeup artist can stand there and watch the pictures come up, and they'll usually interrupt and say, hey, can I go in and fix that? Because now they're seeing the image, and they see once the light hits where stuff is a problem. And your hair too. Hair, if you're catching it the wrong way, it's lighting up from behind. We shot a senior portrait at the studio, and we had a hair light, and it just wasn't working. Her hair was kind of a little frizzy, and it was lighting up all the frizzies, which is going to be a lot to edit out later. And I saw it, and immediately I was like, let's move that light, get it out of the way, because it's not helping us. It's going to cause hours of editing times all these pictures. Fixing the wardrobe malfunction. So we have Vincent here. He comes to the studio quite a bit. I have a picture too like this. This is Susie's picture, but it's the little collar just bugged me. Picture was great, but the little collar not being tucked in the right way, it just was sticking out on my angle. It's sticking out even more. So she was kind enough to share this image with me so I could get in the presentation today, but it was just popped out. It looked awkward, and it was such an easy fix. But I was laying down on the studio floor, shooting up at a weird angle. I had a bigger picture, and it's really something that I just didn't use the image because I wasn't happy with it, and I could have fixed it in about a second had someone else fix it. So my whole team can work together towards a common goal. That's the consistency. We all want to get to that end product. We're all working towards the same direction. The art director, the hair, the makeup, the photographer, and we need to produce this image. So when to tether? Clearly, we talked a lot about in the studio. So in the studio, it's great because you can really create that vision very easily. I'm going to drag the lights. If you see my light stands, most of them are in wheels. So it's very easy for someone to stand there and adjust the lights for me, move around while I'm tethered, while I'm shooting from way over here. I can see immediately if that wall is going to turn gray, if it's going to turn black, if it's going to turn white. The vision gets there very easily. When I'm shooting people, so again, stuff like this. So see the wispies and the hair, easily would have been able to fix a lot of that by just having the hair person jump in there and fix all of those little hairs that were popping out as much as they can, so they don't have to sit there and Photoshop them out. And we talked about the shadows and bringing out underneath hats. I do a lot of creative work with creative lighting, and you really need to see this large. This looked great on the lower screen. We actually were shooting this image from down here, facing her face along the wall, and it just wasn't working. And the reason we knew it wasn't working was because they were popping up on the screen as I was shooting them. And then actually we came around front and put the wall behind her and let the lights light her up. So it just changed the vision, changed the whole shoot that I was looking for just by seeing it large. If not, again, it would look great on the screen, and I'm able to really see it and large. I have a 65-inch TV. I'm not sure what size this is, but I have a 65-inch in the studio that we can really see. And a lot of this, it's not color corrected when it comes up there. I'm not looking for color correction. I'm not looking for that kind of stuff. I'm looking more at the whole image and everything along with it. So again, creative use of gels. That one, is the gels on her. This is lighting her up with lighting the background up with the same gels. So different looks that I look for. So product photography. Super huge and essential for product photography to actually get, know your background, know your depth of field. If you notice here, you have some depth of field, your very narrow depth of field here where, your background's blurry, your foreground's blurry. You want to make sure everything in there is in that critical focus point. And reflections are everywhere. Some of them are good reflections, some of them are bad reflections. So you can see the reflection line right here is in there, but some of them you may have to take out and Photoshop later, but they're not huge. They're not over the label, not ruining the product shot itself. This is easy to take out. If there was a reflection over one of the logos, then it becomes a problem where you have to readjust and shoot, readjust and shoot. So a lot of that stuff, for all the product shots, you're going to want to be tethered, whether it's on location in someone else's warehouse. It's easy to bring a laptop out. You don't have to carry a big iMac out. Bring a laptop out, tether up, and start to shoot all of these images into the laptop immediately. And I can creatively change these and edit them as we go along in Lightroom. So someone earlier had asked about on location. This was another group shot that we shot just before we came here for a real estate company up in Scottsdale, and tons of shadows. They're like, hey, let's go in the front and shoot this image, which was a beautiful, beautiful house. The sun was going down right behind us and light was coming. We had to wait for that to kind of go behind, but everyone's head was creating shadows because we weren't able to tier them too much. They were all kind of, there was one little step, and so, you know, her head was creating a shadow. We had to kind of keep moving the lights around to try to light everyone up and not get shadows on everyone's faces. And then it got even worse when we asked them to throw their hands up in the air. So we're like, hey, do you want to do a fun, easy one? And then everyone's hands were in front of people's faces, but we were able to see that instantly and say, okay, you know, Bob, put your hand down. You're blocking Mary's face. And Bob brought his hand down a little bit more. Don't get so excited, kind of bring it in over here. So those are easy to fix when you have it on a bigger screen. You could zoom in Lightroom and have someone sit in there or do it yourself even and work through that. So I do use it on location, and it does definitely help. Other extreme times for on location, both Susie and I do storm photography, and again, there's exposure elements there. You have the storm coming towards you, it's getting brighter as it's coming towards you. So you could be missing out on the shot because if something hits over here, besides scaring the heck out of you, it's going to be bright. You just get a big white blob. Or if it goes further away, it starts to get yellow and brown and disappear. So with this, you're able to see if you're still on. Again, everything, I'm going to say it over and over again, everything looks great on this 3-inch screen. You're like, wow, I captured it. And then you get home and it's like, oh, it's blurry. So that helps me keep it in focus. Many times I'm working in manual focus when I'm shooting storms, and I'm able to just try to focus way out here on the horizon and then leave it like that. But if I move something in the dark and it gets out of focus now all my shots are going to be blurry after that. Where if you have this tethered in the back of the car, I have a plug in my car, I can pop that in, just have the wire running out, be shooting. You can keep checking it every once in a while, especially in the dark. This is a daytime lightning shot. In the dark, totally manual focus. You're just kind of running by the seat of your pants. You're trying to focus way on a light out here or something far away and hoping that it's going to be nice and sharp like that. All right, so where do we get started? We talked about why to tether and all of that. Where do we get started? What do you need to actually tether your camera? So in this instance, I need my GH5. So the other Lumix cameras don't tether as of yet. We'll keep my fingers crossed because I have a bunch of other Lumix cameras. So I need that. It has a USB-C port. So you need the updated firmware on this too. So if you have this camera, there is a firmware update that enables the tethering. You need a USB-C to USB, or if you have a brand new MacBook, then it has USB to USB-C or USB-C to USB-C, and you can plug that in. It comes with a wire, so your cameras all come with a wire. You can use that one, but it's only about this long. So you can be very close. So if you do want to use that wire, there are extensions. So this one's made by Tether Tools. It's an extension cord basically for your wire that you currently have. There's upsides and downsides. That I use both sometimes. I can get fairly far away from my computer here and shoot. If I do need more room in the studio, say I'm shooting a long lens, shooting a 70-200 or 100-400, I would need more room to back up. I could plug this in and get a little further away. You obviously need a laptop or some sort of computer. It doesn't have to be a laptop. And you need Lightroom Classic CC or Capture One to be able to tether. And you don't need those, but that's kind of the workflow I'm teaching today. You can just tether right to your computer, but the way it works best is to get it right into your editing program. So this is some stuff that makes it a little bit easier to tether, and some of them I mentioned already. So this is not a tether table, but it looks like a tether table. It's like a wooden version of it. So the tether table you see there is a tether table arrow, and that holds my laptop. It has edges on it, so you don't pull it off. See how this has an edge here? It has edges on it. It has a strap that I strap it down. Our friend Larry actually had someone step on his tether cord and pull his laptop off because it wasn't strapped down, so that does happen, and that's horrible. You don't want that to happen before or during your shoot. A jerk stopper. So I'm going to get into the next slide. We'll show what this little jerk stopper is. And a stand. So see how this, you can raise and lower the stand as well to be able to bring your laptop like eye height if you want, or if you're working on it and editing, you can bring it down lower. and I go to the large screen TV. So my workflow would actually be plugged in right to here, and I would be looking at this, and my clients are looking at the TV behind me. So what is a jerk stopper? So this little gadget right here is a jerk stopper. It is the least expensive piece of gear that I have here, but this will prevent two things from happening. It'll prevent this USB-C from getting stepped on and ripped out of the camera, and stopping your shoot tethered. So if that happens, two things will happen. You break your wire, or you break your USB port. Let's hope you break the wire, because this is a lot less expensive than shipping your camera in. If you break the USB-C port in here, you have to send this back to whatever camera company you have and get that repaired, and you're not going to be tethering or shooting for a while. So that's what that does. Basically plugs into your camera. You're going to plug in. Let's see if I can do it holding it. And then you're going to just clip it on, and that takes all the pressure off. So worst case scenario, that's going to break. So everything is on here now, all the weight. If someone steps on it, it's pulling. If someone steps on it, it's pulling right here. You can see how that got tight. It's not pulling out. And I usually leave a little loop like that. I'll leave extra, so then if it does pull out, that you're not going to, you have a little bit of give. And this tightens as well. All right, how do we connect? Let's put this back on my belt. So we talked about plugging in the camera cord. So you're going to plug in your camera cord, hook up your jerk stopper, so that's ready to go. And then on the back of the screen, you're going to see this exact screen. And you can make this go away with some settings. I think mine's gone now, but you're going to say PC Tether. And mine's touchscreen. I can hit that, or I could hit enter. Then there's a Lumix Tether program. So you're going to skip this if you're not shooting Lumix, and I'm going to show you how to do this. So if you're shooting Canon or Nikon or something else, you're going to skip this step, and you're going to go to another part, which I'm going to show you a slide. So this Lumix Tether program is free. It's a little go-between program to let you get the pictures off the camera very smoothly. And there was an older version of this that didn't work so great with the GH4. This one works. It's dead on. It works. You plug it in. We just plugged it in. I was looking for my little pop-up screen, and it was gone. It was already tethered. So it's very solid, very reliable. And then I'm not going to go through every setting on here. Some people do actually go through all these settings, but all the settings are in your camera. So if you go into your menu, you look at them. They're all familiar. You know, manual, your f-stops, everything that you see in your camera menu, on that menu, everything is there. And then what this blank screen is your live view. So you can actually just tether to this if you don't want or don't have Lightroom. You could tether right here, and it just goes into a folder. Your next step is to set up what's called a watched folder. And on the Lumix Tether, it's called reference. So if you see the green arrow, it's called a reference folder. You're going to tell the pictures where to go so you can find them, and then where Lightroom can find them. So in your settings, so if I go back one screen, the way I got to that screen is I hit setting, and then that populates this up here. And then I click on reference, I type in Lumix 1, Lumix Tethering. Right now it's called, I think, B&H Event Space, and then you just have to save that at the end. Other options in there that are important the first time you set this up that you don't want to forget are the storage location. So my storage location is saving to my SD card. So it's going here as well as here. So that creates a backup for me. So immediately, as soon as I shoot the picture, I can have a backup the second I shoot it. So if my card goes bad, which does happen, I've had cards go bad. That is no fun, especially if you have a client or an important shoot. I have it on my hard drive already. My computer goes bad, I have it on the card. So always good to have backup. So I select SD and PC. Hard drives are super cheap now, it's worth it. We talked about the reference. The other thing I have here set is to transfer both the RAW and the JPEG. So you don't need both. So it just says that whatever setting you have, that it'll take both if you need it. So I have mine just to RAW, so it's going to take the RAW. If you have it set to both, it'll pull both of them into the hard drive. and then the most important one, save. Because I've done this all before and then like just went over to Lightroom and I didn't realize why it wasn't tethering. It's because I left this open, I didn't see save way down at the bottom. So you have to click save, it'll save everything, and then I haven't had to change these yet. So they're all just saved in there. All right, at this point, I open Lightroom. If you are using something else like Capture One, you would open that. I don't know that workflow because I live in Lightroom. I teach for Adobe, I teach Lightroom. I love Lightroom, I've been using it since version 1. And now this is Lightroom Classic since Adobe Max. So Lightroom CC itself will not tether yet. I'm sure that's coming. They're working on getting everything in there, but as of today, when this is recorded, it's gonna be Lightroom Classic CC that you would have to open up. Now, this is where if you're shooting a Canon or Nikon, you skip that whole Lumix Tether program, and you're gonna click right here, Tethered Capture, and then you're going to say Start Tethered Capture. That's all you have to do. You click that, it's built in. You don't have to do a whole lot more. You can set settings up. You'll get a little bar that pops up. It'll say connected to your 5D Mark IV or your Nikon A50, and then you're off and shooting. So we're going to go into some points for that of what to do, what not to do when you're doing that. For the Lumix and other people, Fuji and stuff like that, you're going to auto import, enable auto import, and then auto import settings. That's going to open up a dialog. So that's going to open up a dialog here, and that's how you enable the auto import. That keeps it checked on the screen before, so you don't have to do that again. And then you're going to choose that same watched folder that we made in the Lumix Tether program. So if you call it Lumix Tether 1 or Lumix 1, you're going to choose that. Now you can make a session folder below it. Right here, it's like different subfolders. So if you're shooting several different clients throughout the day, you know, morning headshots, afternoon headshots, evening headshots, you can name those whatever you want. There are other settings that I'm not going to go into that you can do regular Lightroom settings here. And again, you have to save it down here and start to shoot. So you're going to shoot a test shot, make sure it populates, make sure it pulls it into Lightroom. So you want to make sure that it's going into the Lumix program and then also populating in Lightroom. So you shoot a few shots just to make sure things are right, and then they're going to auto import from that session on. And then each time you're going to have to set up a new reference folder, or it's all going to go into one big reference folder. If you just leave it that way, they'll just keep piling in that reference folder, and it gets kind of difficult. You can fix that in Lightroom, but you don't. You want to try to do as much as you can before. All right, start shooting away and you'll see stuff. All your pictures one by one will start populating. So you see the black and white one that I'm showing here. So what I was able to do with that is show the client of what it would look like in their concept of what it would look like as a black and white. So I'm in Lightroom already. I simply just hit black and white from the color, and boom, it's black and white, and I can play with sliders right in front of them and say, this is what it'll look like for your black and white magazine cover. And it changes the whole view of it. You can see all the color ones, and then the look is totally different. They can see what they're going towards as a vision. All right, so tips for success and doing this well. So especially with my Canon, I had this problem all the time. I haven't had as much with the Lumix, but auto sleep. So if you've ever tethered and put the camera down and fixed hair and other stuff, and then all of a sudden you come back and you go to shoot, it becomes untethered. And I don't know why it does that, but it doesn't catch up quick enough, or it totally disconnects it. And I had that a lot of problems with teaching. So we'd be teaching like this, and they're like, okay, let's shoot a shot. And the model's stand there, you shoot, and nothing comes up on the screen. So it drove me nuts until I figured out what it was, and it was the auto sleep. So there's two ways to do it. You can either just make it longer, or turn it off. So if you turn it off, have extra batteries, because you're going to put it down, you're going to walk away, start chatting, and then your battery is going to be dead. So make sure you have a lot of extra batteries, or you're going to have no shoot at all, or just have it go for 5 minutes or something. So you can set it down, pick it up. It's normally, 2 to 5 seconds where it'll go to sleep. That's what I used to have it set for. but that will disrupt your session and your setting, and then you're stressed out because now you have a client looking at you have the model waiting, all your lights are set, and you're trying to troubleshoot. And that's the last thing you want to do, is be troubleshooting in front of a client or class or something. So at that point, sometimes I would just abandon it, be like, all right, we'll get back to that in a little bit, and pop the card in, let it import, and grab another card and start shooting again and getting it working. So tips for success 2. So the USB 3 is sometimes troublesome. So if you have a USB 3 port, it doesn't always power as you're shooting. So there's a little boost here if you are having this specific problem. So this is a Tether Boost Pro core controller USB 3. So this little piece here stores energy in here. So the USB 3 is power managed, and it's actually taking power and turning it off when it doesn't need it to save energy, which doesn't help us if we need a constant connection. So it's kind of the same thing. It's falling asleep, but the plug is falling asleep. So this little device goes in between my tether cord somehow, and then I can plug this in. And it doesn't need an external power source. It looks like it has an option for that if you're having severe problems, but it's actually like probably some sort of capacitor in here that's just storing the energy, and then it distributes it out. So I just simply plugged that between, and that fixed a lot of problems. I know Nikon, I don't have a Nikon anymore, shot in the film days, but Nikon has a lot of problems with that disconnection problem. So Canon has one problem with the sleep, Nikon has another problem. These are ways to fix it so you can keep shooting. You know, if you know what the problem is, it's not a problem. You just, you fix it and you move on. It's when you don't know what it is that it drives you kind of crazy. Other times that I would need it was, remember I talked about this extension cord? So this is a USB to a female USB extension cord. So now you have a length problem. So if I needed that, I would plug this in here, and that power boost will keep me powered up. I would plug it between the extension cord and my USB, and that gets it so I can go longer. I can go 15, 20 feet away and not lose the connections as well. Some more tips for success. So we talked about this earlier, shooting the camera and the camera card and the computer simultaneously, creating your backup immediately. Super important. I'm a huge advocate of backups, not as big as my friend Jared Platt. He's crazy huge into backups, but I do like backups. I want as many backups as possible. I'm kind of fanatical about making sure I don't erase my cards before I actually put them on several different hard drives in case something gets corrupted. Another thing, a challenge, we won't say a problem with Nikon, is that will only go to the computer. So when you're shooting your pictures, if you have a Nikon and you're tethered and you have it plugged in, it skips the card a lot of times. So I don't know why it skips the card, but it will not write to the card. So just know that your card's going to be empty. All your pictures are on your laptop or your computer. So I don't know if that's every single Nikon, but most of my Nikon friends have told me that happens. We did it at a workshop once where we let people tether into my computer, and then they went back and they were going to look at their pictures, like, where are my pictures? And they had no pictures on their card at all. It was all on here. I had to take his card, put the card in, put his pictures back on his SD card, and hand it back to him. So if I didn't know that, then all the pictures would get lost, and you don't have that backup. So it's good to maybe have a hard drive with you, plug your hard drive in, make a backup before you leave, that if something happens to the computer on the way home. There is a third-party app that you can use for Nikon as well that helps with that problem, that will, kind of like our Lumix app.
Kind of.
So some of the certain ways that tethering has helped me, and this is sort of a recap of what we went into at the beginning, and then I want to make sure you guys can play with some of this stuff and try it. I will tether this up so we can shoot it in here, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that it all works the way it's supposed to. So fewer mistakes. So I don't run into having those problems I was having earlier with critical focus, where you focused right on your cheek and you didn't catch your eye. You know, the hands are weird to pose a lot of times. So you have these people that's like, oh, put your hands at your side. They're like this, like a statue. So it's like, and then you're like, oh, spread your fingers apart, and they're like this, you know, and it's like, no, not like a claw. So less mistakes with that, less mistakes with hair and makeup and other problems, lashes being stuck down. Clothes, we talked about the clothes of something that just, it maybe not there's something with them, but just the angle you're shooting it at, that it just looks weird. So a lot of those problems I've fixed by just having a bigger picture here and shooting it and looking at it the whole time. Better poses quicker. So I seem to get to the end result a lot quicker when I'm shooting. I'm just seeing it and making those tiny adjustments to move their hand, move their hair, get everything the way I like. I'm not a guru at posing, so this helps a lot because I can just know if it's awkward. So right off the bat, I just know it's like, that didn't work. I don't know what didn't work, but let's try something different, because some people are really amazing at posing. I need practice at that. So the tethering helps me see it, so I know at least if it's wrong. I just know it's like, it's wrong. Let's start over. Let's try something else. Let's move the light, look this way. So I kind of can coach people through a lot quicker and get to that end result. Happier clients, so they can see what's going on. So this was a headshot session, and he came in, he's a gentleman, wrote a book. He's like, I want to do some shots. I want to, you know, and we kind of walked through what he was looking for. He wasn't really sure. Your clients don't always know what they want. They're just like, I need pictures. And then they come in and I have 10 outfits. It's like, okay, we have time for 3, so let's go pick the 3 that you want, and let's go in and shoot these images. And what he does, he's a professional. He wrote a book, so he's a speaker. So he speaks, and he wanted to do a lot of this stuff like this, like I'm doing. He wanted to be like talking to people and pointing and other stuff, but there was no one to talk to, so it was awkward. But when I put it onto the screen, he was able to see what I was talking about. I'm like, if you were talking to the crowd, you'd be referencing, and this is the #1 thing that you should know. There's a #2 thing. So we did some of those gestures, and he was super happy when he was left. He's like, I would have never thought of that. I came in, I was going to sit there and do a headshot like a business card and leave in one outfit. And we walked all through that, and he was a lot happier. He's able to use these on his website, use these on his social media, everything, where he thought he was just coming in, getting one shot and leaving. So you want to keep clients happy. They're the ones that pay for all of our bills and gear and everything else. Focus issues. So this is a challenging shot, really close in, and you have all this stuff here, and I wanted to make sure that I got her eye in focus. Now I have touch focus with this, so that helps. So I get to cheat. So I can literally go like that right in her eye and shoot. I don't have to do the little joystick like I did with my 5D Mark III. But with the Lumix, I can get it in there, but you still want to make sure that it didn't catch, you know, up here or catch something else. You want to make sure that it's dead on. So those focus issues have gone way down. It's not like I'm not guessing anymore. I shoot 3 or 4, and then I'll look at it. I'm not looking at it every single shot, so I'm usually shoot, and then I can go backwards and look through them. I don't have to look at it because it takes, depending on the speed of your wire that you have and the speed of your USB port and your computer, the age of your computer, new computer, you're going to probably get in 2 seconds or so. My computer's about 4 seconds, so I'm not going to be like click and then stare at it and click and stare at it. Maybe the test shots, but after that, I want the session to move forward and be very smooth for the client. So I'm not going to be obsessed with looking at that. But then we'll go back through it together and really analyze what they liked, what I like, and if we got everything in focus. So you saw this shot earlier, professional looking. Now when your client walks in and you just have a camera, it's like, okay, I have a camera. Especially I shoot a micro 4/3 with my, so to some clients, it's like it doesn't look as impressive anymore. This is one of the bigger ones, but I have smaller bodies as well. So now when you have all of this stuff and they're seeing the images pop up this big, they're like, oh, I know I can print an 8x10 because it's 65 inches behind them. So it's a professional kind of feel when they walk into my studio. It's an experience that they get. Where I'm shooting, it's immediately populating on there, and they're not going to maybe get that with the bargain studio down the street, not because they can't do it, they just haven't. So I have like 7 or 8 plasmas in my studio. We have a rental studio too, so we have 4 studios. We have plasmas with artwork all the time, like you see over here. You see the pictures coming up on the wall. We have that all over. We have prints all over. We have this, again, a professional feel to everything. Huge thing. Avoid costly reshoots. So Imagine if I had to bring out a rain machine again, a whole crew, a model, a firefighter, all the gear, rent stuff, you know, so sometimes it'll put you into losing lots of money. So if you don't want to go out and reshoot stuff, we can know right away whether you captured the shot, whether you captured the rain, whether you got the reflection you were looking for, you know, everything. You see every little drop here. So, you know, there was probably 30 or 40 of these images with this pose. I wanted to find the one. I'm usually only looking for one shot. You know, you have a magazine, there's one cover, there's not 50. So I'm not looking, I'm looking for that winning shot that's gonna be on the cover, and that's what the client's usually looking for. So you don't wanna go and have to do all this again. He was freezing, we're in Phoenix, but it's still, he's soaking wet in all this wet turnout gear, and he's out there in between shots or shoots with like a towel freezing, and it was probably 110 degrees out, but you're wet the whole time at night where we had to do this in our back parking lot. And you have this whole crew and team and people with lights so we don't get the models electrocuted, and it's a lot of production to do a shot like this. Don't want to have to redo it unless, you know, you need to, and this helps with that. So we have a vision as a photographer, and we talked about the vision of your client, and they don't always mesh. So you have this vision that you both have, and you have to kind of combine that vision of what's going on and what's happening. And in this case, have 12 people throwing these single pieces up in the air around. So you have a lot of coordination going on. So this is actually in Chicago at a styled shoot, and we have people holding each one of these, and the first time they threw it up, it just kind of was all balled up, and it went straight up, kind of like this one's more balled up, and then would go clump and fell straight down. It didn't float down the way you see in this picture. So it took a while to get to the vision of everyone not clumping them up and throwing them up, which is the easy way, but you had to get enough weight to throw it in the air and then have it flutter down and get these nice lines in there. So it took some ideas and took some time and some coordination, but you eventually get to that vision where the art director, whoever's in charge, or if it's your own personal project, can see like, hey, that's what I'm looking for. Not so easy when you're just throwing it up and it falls down in 1 second. You don't know what's happening. All right, so it keeps me, Photoshop is not my friend. So I have Photoshop. Photoshop is Susie's friend. It's not my friend, where it's not even a love-hate relationship. It's just one way. So Photoshop, I was a huge event photographer before, which you can't tether with events generally, unless you know, we used to do it for certain parts of the event, but not the event. You're running and gunning it. So I'd shoot thousands of images, and I was editing everything in Photoshop manually, and I would, for some reason, I thought it was a good idea to tell people that I would have it to them by the next morning. And I owned it. It gets better. So I not only was a photographer, but I owned, in New Jersey here, when I lived in New Jersey, I owned a DJ company and a photography company. So yeah, all the guests go home. The real photographers, if there was like another photographer, would go home from the prom, I'd have to break down $30,000 or $100,000 worth of gear, depending on how big the event was, and bring, so we'd get home at like 3 a.m. and then I'd spend the rest of the night editing the images so that the students at the prom could have the images the next morning. So yeah, my wrist doesn't really go back like that on this hand anymore. So Photoshop and I don't get along. So I know how to use it, but you know, I'd say maybe kindergarten level, just enough to get me by. So using this, I'm able to get the shots pre-photoshopped. If there's something behind someone, like the exit sign, I just make little movements to be able to adjust that immediately if I'm on location, if I'm in the studio, if there's wires, there's other things. I try to pre-photoshop as much as I can of the image in the camera and get it right in the camera. That's a constant soapbox when I'm teaching, is tell people, get it right in the camera. And this will help you in the instances you can use it by tethering to get it right in the camera. You're just like, wow, got it. Done. It looks good. And then I do my white balance and my cropping and whatever other little things in Lightroom. So I live in Lightroom most of the time. If I have to change something major, of course I go into Photoshop and I get it done. But it's not something that I want to go into Photoshop. You'll probably never hear me say I'll fix it later. You know, I'm not that type of shooter where it's like, oh, I'll fix that later. There's a sign behind your head. I'll rebuild that door. Don't want to do that. So this helps me by tethering, stay out of Photoshop, stay in Lightroom, do very minimal edits. A lot of the stuff you see, I don't overdo a lot of the shots. Even my landscape shots, they're more natural shots that I like to shoot. So All right, so let's see. This is my info. Let me get this hooked up here, and we're gonna shoot a few frames here and see if it will do what it was doing when we got here. Technology, you've seen on Apple stages all over and everything, where it never likes to work the second you're needed to work. It's gonna work? All right, as long as I don't drop the camera putting the jerk stopper on. All right, so plugged it in, clicked my jerk stopper to protect that so when I step on it. All right, let's see. So I was taking some pictures earlier to prove to you that it was working. So he was there, there's Susie on her phone. All right, so my Lumix tether's populated. This is connected. You saw here earlier, I have the what we talked about. I clicked on settings. I have it set to SD card. I have it set to reference of Lumix Tether, RAW and JPEG that it's transferring. And then this one says automatically display the review image. That's when it populates into that live setting there. I don't really need that. I have it on. I don't need it. I had it on for a video I did for Lumix. And then you save it down here, which I'm going to just cancel it because I didn't change anything. And then I open Lightroom. When I go down here, there's your Tethered Capture we talked about. So you would skip everything over and just go right here if you had your Canon. And I know you had the Canon that we talked about earlier when you weren't here. You would just skip over everything and just go right here. And you would say Start Tethered Capture. And what that does is give you a similar box to what Lumix is giving you. And you'd be able to go in, type your session name, you know, whatever your different templates for naming are, and then you can save that out. And then here's your location, so that would be your watched folder. I'm going to cancel that out, and we're going to go back up here. And we go to Auto Import, and then those settings. So I saved this earlier, so we'll see if it all is connected the right way. So Lumix Tether is the same one that I clicked, and I typed in a subfolder name for this event, so it subdivides it out to B&H event space. And now I can change the file names when I'm shooting. I can do develop settings, so the black and whites. We actually did this with a Cam Ranger. There's other ways to tether as well if you have a Nikon and Canon where you can wirelessly tether. So we actually shot a film noir workshop, and everything was going to be visualized in black and white. So we did set this up, our develop setting, to black and white. So then as it was being shot, it was also editing it. So you can go right into the black and white presets, and I can have one my own made, or I can have a custom one made, or just the generic one. And I picked it. So as we shot, it imported the image, and it converted it to black and white as well. So now I can take that off. It's not stuck, it's not baked in, but that helped everyone in the workshop see what we were trying to visualize. So I didn't have to go back and edit each image or batch edit them later. They just immediately populated and were black and white. For this, we're going to keep it at none. I have a metadata preset saved. So it's just very aptly called 2017 Nick until January. I'll call it 2018 Nick. So very creative with those. And that just has all my metadata of my everything in there, of all my copyrights. And then I would put, you know, for here, I'd put my keywords so I can add B&H photo, event space, stuff like that in there, and it will automatically put those in. Oh, clearly I've typed that before. And then the previews, you don't have to worry about that too much unless you care. It's going to make your previews, but normally I put them on standard. 1-to-1's too big, the minimal is too small, it takes too long. If you don't know what the previews are in Lightroom, what you're seeing in Lightroom is a rendering of your image. It's not showing your actual raw image, it's showing you the preview of that. And if it's blurry in the beginning, that's because you have it set to minimal. If you put it to standard, it'll come up quicker. 1-to-1 will come up instantly, but standard is enough where it's just a split second and then kind of gets focused. So we can change that to, I'll leave it to minimal for since we're tethering. All right, let's see if this is hooked up the right way, if I mess something up. Oh, it worked, okay. So basically I can shoot through my session, and again, I'm not gonna look at it for that 4 seconds. I can keep shooting, and I'm gonna be able to have these, they'll start populating on the bottom here as I'm shooting, and they'll load them in. If I had black and white, they'd be coming in black and white, and they're gonna continually populate there, and I can move around the room with my wire here, as far as this will let me go, and continually shoot the images as they populate up there. So the images are populating up and going into Lightroom immediately. Now I can go into Lightroom and use all my tools that I'm used to and edit those out and fix them up and everything. So pretty simple, pretty easy, and pretty handy to be able to get everything in there right away. So the question is, for our viewers online, do I shoot and make some adjustments on the histogram or in the settings and then go back and continue shooting?
Yeah, or any kind of, using what you see to make any kind of adjustments, either in Lightroom or on the camera?
Yeah, mostly on the camera, because I'm trying to get it right in the camera. So when I'm doing my adjustments, if I see like the lighting is too bright or I have something that's going on of a problem, that's why I'm tethering, to be able to kind of make those adjustments in the camera. My settings, if it's blurry, I'm going to go with a higher shutter speed. If it's something, even the white balance, I want the white balance to be flash in the studio or daylight outside. So I am going to make those adjustments in the camera, so then the next picture that comes in is better, so I don't have to do them in Lightroom. Because if I keep shooting, if I adjust it in Lightroom and I keep shooting, they're going to keep coming in wrong. So I want to adjust it on my camera settings and then the next one should be better or closer to what my vision is. So this was from the shoot that we did for the Lumix video of all the different images that we had, and I basically, when I'm going through, I'm not a histogram person. Susie loves the histogram, my partner here, but you'll see shots that are just off on, so I do everything by eye. So I'm gonna shoot it, I'm not looking for technically perfect most of the time as far as what the numbers say. I'm looking for, do we like the image? Does the client like the image? Is it exposed properly? Am I not clipping my white? So I use the blinkies normally on my camera. So in the, when I'm shooting, I can see if it's blinky. So on my first 2 or 3 test shots, I look at the camera, I look at the screen, and I kind of, look at both of them to see, because this isn't my color corrected screen either. My iMac 27-inch at home at my office is what I use to actually edit the images. So this is just another interpretation of what the screen is. So I'll look on the back and adjust, and I'll look at the critical focus here. And let's see, I have a couple in this that I know were totally off the wall from this shoot. That just didn't work. There was just, the lights went off the wrong time or didn't go off, like these two.
Yeah.
So, if that was the first test shot from that shot, I know right off the bat, I know in the back of the camera that's messed up, but I'm not generally looking at the histogram. Even on Lightroom, I usually have the histogram closed when see, it's closed now. So it's hidden here. I don't use it to see whether it's, where everything is. But even that one's a little bit too bright as I was going through. So I'm doing it more by eye. I don't own a flash meter, so I don't use a flash meter. I want to get my settings and my depth of field and all that from what I know about photography correct, and then I'm going to shoot through. And if I see problems as I'm going through, then I adjust and shoot again and adjust. So I'm more of that kind. There's 2 different kinds. Two different photographers. Ones that love flash meters and histograms, and ones that don't. And I'm definitely the one that's not my my brain doesn't think that way for some reason. I'm more just like, do I like the image? Because it could be a technically perfect image, but boring sometimes. All right, well, I thank you for attending and asking great questions and everything, and thank you for everyone out there.